For those who don't know, the State of Design is something that the head designer for Magic the Gathering, Mark Rosewater, puts out every year, and he's been doing it consistently since 2005. So every full Magic year, they go back and they look at all the different sets they released, and they talk about what worked and what didn't. So we're going to review 2022's Magic year. Now for me, 2022's Magic year was the year that I got back into Magic after not having played it since high school. The last Magic set that I ended up playing was Dragon's Maze, which came out in 2013, and immediately after Dragon's Maze, I had graduated and I moved on and I stopped playing Magic altogether. And then this year was really the year that I jumped back into Magic and have been really exploring it and delving headfirst into it all over again. And it's been awesome and it's been fun. This year for Magic really feels like it had some ups and some downs, but overall for me, it's been really fun to get back into Magic, and I'm curious to see what the state of Magic is for this year, and how much do I align and not align with it. Now, disclaimer, I'm not going to go through every single detail in this post because it is extensive, but a link to the entire post is down below if you want to check it out for yourself. So the first set that came out for Magic's year of 2022 was Innistrad Midnight Hunt. Now, personally for me, Innistrad, just like many players, is their favorite set out of everything Magic has ever offered. It's up there with the likes of Dominaria and Ravnica and a bunch of the other really incredible sets that just always seem to hit every time that they come out. So when I was getting back into Magic, I came in right after Adventures in Forgotten Realms had already aired and done its thing, and Midnight Hunt was just about to come out. And I still had an old werewolf deck that I built from the very original werewolf cards back when they came out in original Innistrad, and I was excited to now combine my old werewolves with the new werewolves coming out in Midnight Hunt. Well, for those who don't know, the mechanics for werewolves changed a little bit, and they didn't really mesh too well with old werewolves, making compatibility a little rough, which thank God they announce here when they say that the day-night wasn't backwards compatible. Table's Magic focus is broader than it's ever been, with players wanting to play new cards with old cards. The fact that the old werewolves and the new werewolves don't play smoothly together was seen as a big mistake. I could not agree more. It was some fucking frustrating when I then got the new werewolves and I played with them in draft and I realized, okay, these have to go with this day-night mechanic, and then when I brought them home and tried to make a commander deck out of Tovolar as the commander using my old werewolves, I'd have two werewolves on the table, but they would not transform under the same conditions, and that was some fucking irritating. And honestly, it's probably the big reason I don't play that deck as much as any of my other ones. I used to love werewolves immensely, and it was my favorite deck that I had from back when I played in high school. And since I've converted it into a commander deck, I don't really play it as much as my other commanders. I think it's my least played commander deck. And that sucks because I still love werewolves overall, and I still love werewolves and Innistrad in Magic, but goddamn is it very irritating to have werewolf cards that do not interact with each other exactly the same. Another thing that I'm very glad they pointed out here was the colors weren't of equal power level in limited formats, especially draft. And I highly agree, because my first experience with Innistrad Midnight Hunt and with getting back into Magic overall was going back to draft. I actually filmed my first time going back to a draft event after not playing forever. You can check out that video here. But a little bit of a spoilers, I tried to play werewolves. I tried to draft red-green and play werewolves because that's what I remember playing back when I played Magic in high school. And it fucking flopped hard. And it wasn't even that I didn't understand how to play werewolves. I adapted to the mechanic pretty quickly, even with the changes, but holy fuck, every other color absolutely squashed it. So when they say here the colors weren't evenly balanced, with white, blue, and black being stronger than red and green, sadly the main werewolf colors, that led to certain archetypes, especially blue-black zombies, being dominant. And I couldn't agree more. It really feels bad when Innistrad Midnight Hunt, the first of a 2-block set in Innistrad, focused around werewolves, and the werewolves really didn't get their due. It fucking sucked, man. And double feature was a big miss. I feel like that is still too kind of a thing to say about double feature. This isn't quite a design issue and isn't exactly about Innistrad Midnight Hunt, but it was one of the biggest pieces of feedback I got about Innistrad Midnight Hunt. Players believed double feature was unnecessary, they didn't like the black and white aesthetic, felt we misled the audience of what the contents were going to be, and were upset that it wasn't a crafted draft experience rather than just the two sets thrown together. Hold on a minute. Players believed double feature was unnecessary. True. They didn't like the black and white aesthetic. True. Felt we misled the audience on what the contents were going to be. We didn't feel like you did. We know you did, because you outright fucking lied about what the product had. Mark, we don't feel like you misled the audience. You flat out misled the audience. You lied on the fucking promotional material for the product what it was going to be, and we're upset that it wasn't a crafted draft experience rather than just the two sets thrown together. Because you said it was a curated draft experience. in the fucking marketing. The first bit of this paragraph is fair, but the last little bit feels like you're trying to direct attention away from the fact that you outright fucking lied to us. I go way more in detail about Double Feature and how fucking awful of a product that was up here if you want to watch that, but overall, it was an absolute fucking garbage fire. And I'm not going to talk about it anymore. If you want to watch more, you can check it out here. Now, they have a couple things for highlights under Midnight Hunt as well. The highlights weren't as big for me as they say they were for them. Like, for example, the new mechanics were mostly popular. Yeah, they were okay. Decayed, Disturbed were all right. Day-Night was, it was okay. I would rather you made it backwards compatible with old werewolves, personally. It's a cool idea, and if old werewolves followed the same trend, or like didn't exist at all, then I would have no problem with Day-Night, but the fact that it just fucked over everything backwards compatibly just didn't work. And the addition of witches and folk horror was appreciated. Yeah, you know what, I'm kind of okay with that. I didn't build any Coven decks. I don't really like Coven as a mechanic, but I'm glad it was implemented because the cards looked cool and it fit the Innistrad theme. Also, I've talked about this before, but that Arlen Cord artwork, especially this one, god damn. Then moving on to Innistrad Crimson Vow, the second part of the Innistrad block. Now, I'm going to be dead honest with you. I didn't like Crimson Vow. I thought it was pretty low tier. It wasn't garbage, but it was pretty bland. It didn't really excite me as someone who really loved Innistrad. It just felt like is really how much I can explain about it. But I also am not a massive fan of vampires. I think they're cool, they're fun, and I enjoy them as much as like any other person. But in terms of like magic, vampires aren't my overall favorite, especially when it comes to Innistrad. I way more like the werewolves and like angels and such. Vampires are okay, but they're back in the back line along with zombies and such. They're okay, but a whole set of Innistrad strictly around vampires was meh for me. And then even more making it not even just more about the vampires, but about the wedding that was going on. I appreciate that they really delved into the lore and the story that was going on, but overall mechanically, I really didn't like it. I drafted Crimson Vow twice, I think, and I just never drafted it again because it just wasn't for me and it wasn't fun. So they have 4 highlights listed here, but honestly for me, the only highlight that really strikes a chord with me is that the Dracula cards were well received. Those were cool. I don't have any personally, but I liked seeing them come out and I liked seeing them in person when other people got them in openings. That was awesome. And like they mentioned, for the first time since Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths, and the Godzilla cards, we did another overlay of another IP, this time Dracula by Bram Stoker. I got a lot of positive feedback from players who enjoyed the book and felt we did a good job finding appropriate cards for the book's character and settings. I agree 100% with this. The cool cards from Dracula were awesome. I very much enjoyed that. That was cool. They also say the wedding theme was fun. I disagree. It was very meh. And they also go ahead and say, as with any feedback, the audience doesn't always agree, and I'm part of that audience that doesn't agree. I overall did not like the wedding theme. It was pretty mediocre, if not bland. Now for lessons, I again agree a lot more with the lessons going on here. First one being, it didn't feel like a horror setting. I could not agree more. Beyond the fact that it was centered around vampires and had the cool Dracula cards, the overall feeling of the set was pretty mediocre and bland. It didn't feel like Innistrad, it just felt like celebrating a vampire wedding, which was But others felt the wedding took over the set and distracted from the gothic horror feel that they associated the plane with. The tone was more celebratory than scary, and many fans of the plane of Innistrad said it didn't feel like the Innistrad they had fallen in love with. I agree, full stop. And then training, cleave, and exploit were more miss than hit. I agree, especially around training. Training for me really was a bit of a bonkers strategy that I only saw 2 cards that really seemed cool with the training mechanic, but even those I never saw played outside of the people who drafted them that had to play them because they drafted them. Beyond that, I've never seen a card with training ever again. I think the only card type that I see used out of these 3 is cleave. Cleave cards I still see come up from time to time. Training and exploit I have never seen since I drafted Midnight Hunt the twice times. And then we move on to Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. Now Kamigawa, the original set, came out way back in the day. It came out, I think, right before I started playing, so it is a very old set, and a lot of people were very excited to see, especially now that it is no longer like traditional Japanese inspired and now is full-on cyberpunk Japanese inspired, which a lot of people were very excited to see, especially since Cyberpunk 2077 finally came out. A lot of people had the hype around the cyberpunk aesthetic, and for me, honestly, Neon Dynasty wasn't something I was super looking forward to. I ended up enjoying it more than I thought I was going to, but it still wasn't like the greatest thing since sliced bread ever. Now, that's just for me personally, because it's not really my kind of set, but Was it a bad set? No, I think it was a good set. And like they say here in the highlights, it was the home run set of the year, which I'm not surprised by in the slightest. While there were criticisms, which I'll get to below, this was hands down the best received set of the year. Returning to Kamigawa had been an enfranchised player request for many years, so there was a huge amount of excitement when we did. Now here's something about the lessons that I think expands to a lot more than just Kamigawa. When they say players were sad we were only on Kamigawa for one set. A lot of people are upset that we're no longer doing blocks of sets. Like the last block we had was at the very start of the Magic year where we had Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow. And after that, I'm pretty sure I saw somewhere, if I can find it again, I'll put it right here. But I saw Mark Rosewater announcing that they probably weren't going to do any more block sets anymore because it just was not worth it overall monetarily. Which for me personally, I mean, sure, you're a company, you need to make money, it's a business, I get it, but also from a fan standpoint and from a consumer of the product, block sets were my fucking favorite thing ever. There's so much potential and so much lore and so much story and so much interesting stuff going on in a vast majority of these planes and these Magic sets that you don't like spending one time there, and then a couple months time there's already previews coming out and then like live streams, and then boom, you're on the next set, and like everything we just did for the other set, fuck it, forget about it, throw it away, we're on to the next one, and then 3 months after that the cycle repeats itself. It's running at such a breakneck speed that we can't just enjoy where we are for a time and just really expand and explore it. And I don't like that. Now, this may seem like I'm cherry picking here because of my aesthetic and everything, but a perfect example of that is Kaldheim. Kaldheim was such an incredible set, and I know I wasn't playing Magic when it came out, but I discovered Kaldheim when I was looking around and I saw the boxes for it, and I was like, oh shit, what is that? That looks super fucking cool. And I explored it, and oh my god, there is so much attention to detail. There was so much lore and world building and intrigue, and just everything about Kaldheim was so fucking incredible. And then 3 months later, boom, we're gone from Kaldheim and we're on to the next set. Kaldheim is set up where you could make that easily a 2-block set, 3-block set, I don't know about that, but a 2-block set, easily you could do that because there's just so much in Kaldheim worth exploring, but we don't get the time to do that because, well, Wizards of the Coast cares more about money than actually curating a fun set that you can explore and see. And it's really sad that that seems to be the way we're going now, but, you know, money trumps all. And then, of course, Mark says there has been a lot of discussion online about how long Magic should be staying on planes. There isn't much consensus, but most seem to agree that they would have liked Kaldheim to get a second set. I meant Kamigawa, but also Kaldheim. Kaldheim deserves a second set so fucking badly. And the last two lessons here, complexity was a tad high. I overall agree with. It was a bit much for me personally, and players weren't happy with Samurai's mechanical identity. That one I very much agree with, because when I drafted Kamigawa, and I drafted it, I think about 4 or 5 times, I always, every single time without fail, went for the Samurais, because I personally liked the Samurais. I like Samurais as well, just outside of Magic, so I wanted to play with Samurai decks, but every single time, I got absolutely fucking flatlined by everything else. Gee, it feels like I always play the cool things from the set that are absolutely dwarfed by everything that's not promoted. I play Werewolves in Midnight Hunt, and I get fucking squashed by everything else. I play Samurais in Kamigawa, and I get squashed by everything else. Is it possible that I'm just bad at Magic? No, it's Wizards, that's the problem. And then we have Streets of New Capenna. Now, honestly, for me, was never exciting to begin with, and when it came out, I drafted it once, and I never went back to it. I didn't hate it by any means. It just really didn't feel like a Magic set to me. It felt like The Godfather with fantasy elements, which, sure, if Wizards wants to expand out and test out new sets and new ideas, by all means, they're free to do so. They can do whatever they want. But for me, it didn't feel like a Magic set to me. There's nothing really about the highlights or the lessons that I really want to focus in on because I honestly didn't spend a lot of time on there. Again, I only drafted it once. But I will say, the very last lesson they have here where it says the tricolor lands should have been called triomes. Yeah, obviously. Why the fuck didn't that make it into the card? Like, how on earth do you come back with tricolored lands again and not call them triomes? They've always been called triomes. Why did you change it? That is a dumb decision, and I'm glad they've taken that into account. And then we have Commander Legends, Battle for Baldur's Gate. Holy fuck. I have never been more disappointed in a set in my life. Again, I came back into Magic after Adventures in the Forgotten Realms came out. I heard about it and then I kind of forgot about it, and then a friend of mine got me a pack for it and I opened it and I loved it. I love the aesthetic, I love the cards, I love that dice rolling was now implemented. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I personally love it, and I was super fucking jazzed to see that it was making another comeback, and it was a Commander Legends set, because the Commander Legends initial, that was a cool set too. I liked it. I like a lot of the cards from it, and I play Commander primarily as my game of choice. So then when Battle for Baldur's Gate starts getting leaked online and the previews start coming out, some of them are interesting, but a lot of it seems like, wow, in terms of Commander cards and Commander reprints, there's really nothing here, is there? There was no Smothering Tithe, there was no Dockside Extortionist, there was no Rhystic Studies, there was none of Commander staples in Battle for Baldur's Gate, a Commander Legends set. So what the fuck are we actually getting, and why is it called Commander Legends? And then when it came out and I drafted it once. I really want to draft it more, but every time I remember the cards that are in this set, I just don't. I don't want to draft it. I've never been let down by a set so fucking hard. Like, honest to God, the only reason people would buy Commander Legends Baldur's Gate cards anymore is if you play with gates, or if you really, really want to get all those mythic dragons. But beyond that, it was overall a flop of a set. And I love Dungeons and Dragons, and it hurts to fucking say that, but it's true. It was a horrible flop. Like, beyond the Ancient Dragons, the only cards that I actually enjoyed from the set were cards that allowed you to venture into the dungeon or take the initiative, which were cool to get because I was able to put those in my Sephirus Commander deck, my favorite deck overall, but we only got one more dungeon. We got the Undercity, which you can only go into if you take initiative. Why didn't we just get Monarch back? And yes, I know it's a Dungeons and Dragons set, so of course it has to be take the initiative, but why on earth is there only one dungeon? We had 3 in Adventures of the Forgotten Realms, and we get 1 in Baldur's Gate, and only able to go in that one if you take the initiative, which very, very few cards even let you do. At least, thank God, the moment you go into the Undercity, any other cards that say venture or take the initiative, you just go down to the same dungeon that you're already in. Thank God for that, at least. Outside of a few cards kind of being somewhat cool, it was an overall flap set for me, and I'm very sad about that because I was very hyped for that set, I think more than any other set. And the first 2 lessons here are perfect examples of that, like I already said. The first one being, it shouldn't have been labeled as Commander Legends. No, never should have been labeled as that. The most common complaint I got was the players were expecting the set to be somewhat that it didn't turn out to be. Many believed the label Commander Legends implied they would have a lot of highly desired reprints for Commander. No shit, Mark! Why the fuck do you think we'd think that, huh? Come on! The lack of Commander reprints combined with Double Masters 2022 coming on its heels with many of the reprints player hoped to see in Commander Legends Baldur's Gate irritated players. Irritated is an understatement, Mark. It was so fucking blatantly obvious that the fucking Battle for Baldur's Gate set was just thrown to the side, and there were so many cool Commander reprints that you all fucking thought to yourself, this would go well in the Commander Legends set, but we should be able to charge more than fucking any set ever in Double Masters 2022. So let's take all these Commander reprints and put them in Double Masters 2022, and then we can charge an obscene amount of money for that set. Instead of like a decent amount for this set and a decent amount for Commander Legends, nah, let's just fucking front end everything onto Double Masters 2022, which, holy fuck, infuriated everyone. And then it felt more like Dungeons and Dragons Adventures in Forgotten Realms 2 than Commander Legends 2. I'm not going to read the rest of it because obviously no fucking shit. And that was it for Magic's 2022 year. I enjoyed jumping back into Magic, and I enjoyed getting back into Magic. Outside of a few really cool decks that I've built for Commander, the overall year wasn't my favorite year that I've ever had, because sadly I think most of the packs that I bought this year were packs from Kaldheim, Commander Legends 1, and Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. And I'm honestly sad that I didn't get back into Magic in that year when I could actually experience the Kaldheim draft and Adventures in the Forgotten Realms draft, and especially Commander Legends draft. I think I would have had a lot more fun in that year, but at least I can still go back into my local game store and pick up packs from those sets and do Winston drafts with Jackson, and still somewhat experience drafting those sets that I didn't get to when they first came out, but I at least still get to pick up the cards and have fun with them now. So what am I most excited for looking forward? The Commander decks for Warhammer 40k. That shit looks awesome. However, there is one thing I realized about those decks that are coming out that I never really thought about, is if the decks aren't good out the gate, and of course a lot of people, probably myself included, are going to be swapping in cards of their own and taking out cards from the deck that don't need to be there. But every one of the cards in every one of these decks, the artwork is going to be 40k themed. So it's really going to feel awful when you have to start taking out cards from these decks and putting in your own cards, and then the theme of being 40k just starts to really get cut down, which is a shame, and it's likely going to happen anyways, because there's no way that these decks are going to be absolute fucking top tier right out of the box. They're probably going to be just the average like most precons, and a lot of precons get upgraded because they need to be. And I never thought about that, and that's honestly gonna suck. Could I just get 2 decks, keep one exactly Warhammer 40k themed and make the other one the deck that I want it to be? Yeah, but that's a lot of fucking money. So I'll likely just get the commander decks that I want to have, and I'll probably just pull out the cards that don't work with the deck and put in some of my own, and they're going to look great, and I'm probably going to put them in my bander and have fun looking at them. But it's kind of going to be sad that, you know, you play a bunch of 40k cards and all of a sudden you're playing a regular, you know, Dominaria card or an Innistrad card, and it's suddenly like, oh, that doesn't really fit 40k, but oh well, you know, it is what it is. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to tell your friends. If you didn't, you tell me, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Skål!